And welcome to the Mailbox. And this week we've got a very interesting theory from one of the viewers on a bit of a Jaina speculation. We've also got some comments on WoW tokens, community, time gating, and a fairly spectacular idiot of the week this week. So first of all, on to the where's the mailbox. So last week apparently was a little trickier. Now, a couple of comments that came from it. Someone actually saying that they totally knew what it was, but they're not going to answer because, they're not particularly keen on names. So, okay, fair enough. It was actually only identified by one person, though. And, it was indeed, it was Shattrath, but it was specifically the Shattrath in Talador. And same with the Blood Knights and the Jaina with the Crystal Shooting and Iron Horde rockets. More specific than we really need. Talador, Shattrath was plenty enough there. So for this week's Where's the Mailbox? There it is. So if you know where that is, the specific location and the zone it's in, then put it in the comments below. And on to the first one. Now this is a really interesting one. So this is not a spoiler. There's not going to be any spoilers in this one. We're not really talking about storyline. This is the only one we're talking about storyline really, but it's not a spoiler storyline. It's not something we've got from the beta or anything like that. It's just talking about what we already know about Jaina. And it's quite interesting. So it says, I'm going to read it out in full. This makes me think there is a possibility that my wild conspiracy theory could end up being real, at least insofar as it may be introduced to the game. Namely that almost all of the raids or dungeons accessible in the Caverns of Time involve something with Jaina or Thrall, and it now seems Jaina is getting the idea that she wishes things had not happened in the past the way they did. Therefore, since Jaina is a very powerful mage, is it possible she has become tempted to involve herself with the Bronze Dragonfly to restore their powers and their seeming immortality, while in the process creating the infinite dragonflight on purpose? Perhaps she tries to alter the past and prevent Thrall from creating the Horde, or prevent Medivh from contacting the Horde, or prevent Arthas from becoming the Lich King, and the other things the Caverns of Time dungeons tried to prevent, but which we players interfered with by running the dungeons. It's interesting, isn't it? What is certainly true, it is certainly true that Jaina desperately wishes she had not stood aside and allowed Rexxar and Thrall to kill her father. That's explicitly stated now in the Jaina comic, the new Jaina comic. We sort of pretty much got that impression anyway. She is certainly a powerful mage. Now, just one tiny little thing. She is, without giving away any storyline, in a scenario in the Battle for Azeroth, we're left in no uncertain terms that Jaina is a stupendously powerful mage. We know she's really powerful. But then there are other really powerful mages in the game as well. And put it this way, a really powerful mage in the game takes one look at Jaina and goes, we can't even fight you. The only option is to flee. So she's billed as being, even in the eyes of powerful mages, a super powerful mage. We know that powerful mages, or even much less powerful mages, can dabble in time. That's why, the Bronze Dragonfly sort of exists to prevent mages interfering with time. So we know that they could sort of have the power to do this as well. The motivation is certainly there. Whether the means is there, given that Jaina, in the particular time we are now, it does have the ring of possibility about it, because the Bronze Dragonflight being much weaker, or supposed, I don't really know where we are with Dragonflights, if I'm perfectly honest. At the end of Cataclysm, you sort of got the impression they basically lost their powers, but then that's not true, because dragons have done things since. We've even had a time travel one with Chromie and Legion, so they're still there, but where are we with them? I don't know, I'm going to be honest. But yeah, this the motivation would definitely be there. I'm less convinced about the Arthas one. I know that she'd ideally want to try and prevent Arthas becoming the Lich King there. But is that her real burning ambition? I don't know. I've got to say. But the ones from Burning Crusade, the Black Morass and Durnhull Keep, those ones would definitely be something that Jaina would have a vested interest in dealing with. And because, those dungeons from TBC, I'm quite sure that at the time in TBC, they had no plans for Jaina to become anti-Horde at the time, of course. So it'd be something that, you're taking advantage of a past situation. And I'm sure there's probably the odd thing in there if you went into the nitty-gritty to say, oh, no, it won't be like that. Because really the Infinite Dragonflight storyline was sort of concluded. But at the same time, I don't know that it was really properly, to my satisfaction anyway, explained the motivation for it. Jaina would add a motivation to it. So it's an extremely interesting theory. And certainly I would agree with, even with the Arthas one, with the Strathern one, Jaina would have an interest in trying to, if she's going to go ahead and try and change the timeline anyway, why not change the timeline of every cock-up in her life? Not that she was responsible for the Strathern thing, but nonetheless, it was a key part of her life. And of course, Arthur's very dear to her. So, yeah, I could absolutely buy this. I could buy this as being extremely plausible. And it wouldn't be interesting if they actually did do something like that. The issue is, the only issue is from a gameplay point of view, is how do you do that? Because that's already happened. We've already done those ones. Simply to have a storyline where it's revealed that Jaina was responsible for them makes me think, I don't know. Because we've already done them. We've already done those dungeons. So just fitting it into the game, I think, would be more difficult. But the actual plausibility of the storyline, yeah, is absolutely there. On to, before we move off Jaina, so I love how ghoulish Rexar looks. This is to do with the comic, of course, and we were presented two different versions of Rexar killing Dalen. There's the one that Jaina recalls, which is, of her very teary and Thrall comforting her. And then there's the one that is imagined by the people of Kulturas, which is this one. And yes, it does look, you see, you can look on people's face like, if we want to super analyse it, like pretend we're a media studies student. So Rexar, yeah, looking very satanic there. Dalen, hands outstretched to his daughter as if, why? Jaina looking very haughty, turning her back on him. And Thrall looking on with glee as well. This is the scene that is imagined by the Kulturans, who very much consider Jaina to be a traitor of the worst kind. They consider it, I think, worse than the Horde, because, well, the Horde were against them anyway, on the opposite side. But Jaina was supposed to be on their side. So interesting stuff. Again, without going into any further spoilers that have come from the beta there. So I'm not going to talk about any of those today. Right, on to some sort of more gameplay things. So, someone here saying, honestly, I'm Alliance, and I've not been in a proper raiding guild since Cataclysm. Even I'm thinking of switching fully to my Horde alts, just because I can't get into any content higher than regular Heroic. And it's cropped up again, this faction imbalance in Mythic raiding, particularly. And, it is very, very tricky because, I've looked at guilds that are Alliance guilds, long-standing Alliance guilds, that have made the decision already to go Horde. They're saying on their WoW Progress thing, we're going Horde. And Blizzard, when it came to BlizzCon, I remember someone asked the question, so what if you want to play this particular faction? It's probably Alliance. And Ian Hazacostas just did his usual dismissive, well, play it then. You play whichever one you want. which is nonsense. We know. But they have since acknowledged it. If they were just going to go along that line, oh, everyone can play whatever they want, then I would just think we're doomed. But they've acknowledged the problem as an actual problem. They've not just acknowledged that there is an imbalance, because, you have to be blind not to notice that. But they've specifically acknowledged it as a problem with which they are going to deal with. But they also, it's not just that they didn't say how they were going to deal with it. They specifically said that they're not ready to explain how they're going to deal with it. The only thing so far that they've done is this, which I thought was a good start, but not in itself enough. So there's going to be an achievement for Mythic Raiding in the next expansion, where if you finish in the top 100 Horde, and a particular tier, you get an achievement for that. And if you finish in the top 100 Alliance, you get an achievement for that. Now, that alone is only going to sway a few. It might sway some people, I don't know. But you've got to go down the checklist of guilds that might be swayed by that. So first of all, they have to be a guild that doesn't think it would finish in the top 100 Horde, but does think it would finish in the top 100 Alliance. So there's two conditions straight away there. There can't be someone who's confident of competing for top 100 Horde, but they must be very confident of competing for top 100 Alliance. Bear in mind, the reason why people go Horde, some people obviously just enjoy playing Horde, that's fine. But I'm talking about people who choose it for raiding purposes. It's either just because it just makes recruiting much easier, but it's not just about that. There's still a perception now, which is not completely untrue, that although, how allied races are mixing that up is difficult to say at the moment, but there is certainly a perception that the Horde racials are better. So people will look at it this way: even if they've got exactly the same people, they can finish a raid tier a little bit quicker with Horde as Horde than Alliance. Now, whether that's strictly true for a lot of guilds is debatable, but certainly that's the perception. So you've got to bear in mind, people will feel that if they're going to move from Horde to Alliance, it'll take them a little bit longer. But, will they they'll think that. As I say, I don't know whether that would even be true. But would it be enough of a pull if they're going to get an extra achievement out of it? Maybe. But again, they'd have to be fairly sure that they're not going to leave the Horde, take longer and therefore affect their world rank, and still not get into the top 100 Alliance. So it's quite niche there. Then you've got to have guilds who are prepared to do it, because you need to persuade the vast majority of people in your guild, at least, to make the move. It's going to have a cost associated for everyone, unless people do what they did in Scrub Busters and just start rolling new characters there. It don't cost them anything then, on the new realm. That's possible. If you don't feel you're going to need your current characters. So, yeah, it's quite... there's not many people that is really going to affect. If they rolled it out and did more than just top 100, they did some other ranks as well, then that might help a bit. But the annoying thing for me is that guilds are already obviously having to decide their strategy for BFA. We're, less than 3 months away from release? And... and those guilds are having to make those plans. And Blizzard have still not said anything since. All they're saying is, yeah, we've got a plan. They certainly can't expect people to just go, oh, you've got a plan, all right, we'll stay Alliance, it'll be fine. Because I remember the last time they had a plan to change player raiding behaviour was in MOP, right? It was just before Throne of the Thunder King. And... So there was a situation where you had 25-man raiding, you had 10-man raiding. And, 25-man raiding, there were far more people doing 10-man raiding than 25-man raiding. And Blizzard wanted to sort of stress the extra, well, I would agree anyway, the extra epicness of doing 25-man. And leave 10-man for people who just wanted those smaller, more intimate groups. So they said, and I remember Preach doing a video on it at the time, and because Blizzard had laid it on quite thick as well, and Preach was saying, oh, go 25 man. You know, obviously he was a big supporter of 25 man as well. Anyway, but you know, go 25. Blizzard are going to do this thing. You know, it's definitely going to be worth going 25 man. I don't know what it is yet, but you know, you get into 25 man guilds. It's going to be so worth it. What Blizzard did, their plan was they introduced what we now call Warforging, but at the time they called it Thunderforging for that one tier. After then it became Warforging, and it's stayed ever since. So the idea that you can get a piece of gear and it might randomly upgrade an extra, whatever it was, 5 or 6 item levels. But this was the plan. Sorry, I've gone out of focus. You had a higher chance of getting Warforged on 25 man. That was it. A higher chance of getting Warforged. So you were more likely to get your full Warforged set, or Thunderforged set, sorry, with that one on 25 man. Did that sway a lot of people? Did that change players' behaviour? No, not at all. So do we have any confidence that if Blizzard have a plan to redress the balance, that will actually work? Not at all. No. Unless Blizzard start coming out with their plan, which they still haven't, and they haven't said anything further about it since the last time they said we've got a plan, but we're not ready to say yet. I mean, to be fair, when someone says we're not ready to say yet, it doesn't really sound like they have a plan. It sounds like they're thinking of a plan, to be fair, but it doesn't actually sound like they've got one, does it? So at the moment, yeah, it's grim. It's grim. I mean, I really don't know what I'm going to be doing next expansion. I really don't want to go Horde. I never in any particular expansion really want to go Horde. I much prefer playing the Alliance, just from a storyline point of view. But in Battle for Azeroth, which I will state again as I keep doing, I is not regarded as a faction v faction expansion. However, it's nonetheless going to have, more than any other expansion there has ever been, a much more unique experience depending on your faction. You know, it's no longer, like TBC, you had slightly different experience, but a lot of the areas were basically the same quests in the end. Wrath, you started off in different areas, but again, very quickly ended up being pretty much the same. It's not really the case here. You've got a more unique experience for both Alliance and Horde than there has ever been, storyline-wise, question-wise. So for that reason, it's more important to play the faction that you really want to play. And yet, it is the expansion where if you're a Mythic Raider, it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher to actually exercise that choice. Unless, of course, you actually choose to be Horde. In which case, you're laughing. So it's pretty grim. I've been looking around guilds, and there's just, there's nothing. It's not even like, no, I'm not really keen on that guild. It's just, there is nothing. There is nothing at all. If I want to just look at Alliance guilds, no one is recruiting. But there you go. And you look at some, I'd say some that are Alliance now and have been Alliance for like 10 years or so, are going, we're going Horde. Our guild was even thinking about it. I don't know where that's really gone, but they were thinking about it. So, yeah, it's grim. It is grim. On to the next one. So, community. So, this is about, Blizzard's little communities thing. It says, communities already exist in Diablo 3, and they are actually pretty nice. There will be legacy raid communities, battle pet communities, cross-guild raiding communities, power level communities, you name it. I'm absolutely sure about this. I think this is... it is going to be very, very interesting. What I find... It says, you name it, there's a niche in the game, there'll be a community. What I hope of communities, if I'm honest, is... Because I have this real problem with pre-mythic raiding, like normal and heroic raiding, having too much of a pug culture. And, it's an MMO. And I obviously don't want to force my philosophies on other people. But I just feel that in an MMO, that it's far more enjoyable for everyone, even a very casual player, if you're in a guild. It is just inherently much more enjoyable if you're in a guild of like-minded players, not just a random guild, not just, unfortunately, as many new players will do, getting sucked into some guild that just invites everyone. For some, I don't know for what reason these days. There used to be a reason to do that. I don't know what the reason is these days. But nonetheless, it's much better if you can just join a guild of common purpose, and it doesn't really matter how regularly you can play or how reliably you can play. There will be guilds for that. And if, people can use these communities to ease themselves into like a social group of common purpose, and if it helps to do that, particularly for something like normal and heroic raiding, then I think that will be a lot better. I mean, one thing, does open raid still even exist? Because that sort of used to do something similar. I remember, I used to do a few open raids in WoD, where, if people had a good time in there, they would generally look for the same one coming up the next week. Does it still go on? But at the moment, but even that is still technically puggish. It's just at least a bit of a step forward. But something that moves it towards actual communities that are, proxy. It doesn't have to be an actual in-game guild. Something like one of these communities could serve just as well, or almost as well at any rate. I think then it would be a positive experience. On to the second question, though, or second statement, I should say. It says, time gating exists because the player base devours the content far, far faster than the devs can produce it. It's not really that reason. Obviously, people consume the content faster than it can be produced, but the same applies in any game. Other MMOs, the same thing applies, but other MMOs don't always time gate. I think so. Time gating, I'm not going to say is unique to World of Warcraft. I can't say that, but it's certainly not commonplace in MMOs that I've played. The reason is I can't put it down to anything other than the fact it's what is different about World of Warcraft has a subscription model. And then that's it. That is the only way. You either use gold to buy your WoW token, and pay for each month, or just pay for each month. But you're getting a subscription some way or other, and it's the only way to play it. If you want to go beyond level 20. As a result, they really want people to do that. The only way to get people to be playing regularly is to get those subscriptions. So it's for that reason. Whereas in another game, then they don't mind so much, because they're not dependent on your subscription. You'll buy the DLC if you don't have a subscription. It tends to be if you have a subscription, you get the DLC. But if you don't, you buy the DLC. Well, they don't really mind if you use it up after a month and don't play for a few more months. I guess it's better if you do. And actually, some of those games have other things in the game that encourage you to play for longer. Because that's another thing that annoys me. They don't even have to time gate. I can understand them time gating LFR, but I think, if I'm going to say anything about LFR, there is another benefit that it means at least a lot of people can't defeat all the bosses in LFR before they might on, say, heroic. Because maybe, if people could do it on LFR before they can do it on heroic, maybe fewer people would want to do it on heroic or normal. Something like that. So, there is a gameplay benefit to time gating LFR. But a lot of the other things, it really is just about keeping people subscribing. And but if they did things differently, they wouldn't have to. But I've long ago said I think it's quite a while since Blizzard truly innovated in the game. It's sad to say. But what they used to do, at least even when they weren't innovating, is they used to look at good ideas in other games and not just like nick them. I mean, they were, but that's fine. But they used to improve them and make them better and put them into World of Warcraft. And they don't even do so much of that these days. But there you go. But yeah, no, I mean, time gating, the consuming content faster than you can create it exists for every game. But not every game time gates. Next one. So PvP, I don't normally talk about PvP, but this isn't even really PvP. So someone said, I know some people who have been prestiging through doing those exclusively, referring to like the Warden Towers, which effectively, unless there happens to be an enemy faction player there, and why would they, is effectively a PvE experience. It says, wonder how they will cope with having to get their honour mainly from doing PvP. I don't think there's going to be a lot of sympathy for someone who was getting PvP content done without ever doing PvP. I mean, is it even an efficient way to get prestige? I mean, maybe it is. It just sounds strange to me. I mean, I don't really know. I don't even have Prestige 1. So, I've avoided PvP in this expansion. As I do in most expansions. If I don't get a PvE benefit, I don't do it. But, yeah, so, those people are sorry if they want to do it in the next expansion. The question is, though, why would they want to do it? Is it just for the achievements? Because if they don't want a PvP, what's the benefit of even doing the prestige stuff? Unless, as I say, it's just for achievements. But why would you even... I don't know. Why would you even want the achievements for a piece of content you don't want to play? I don't get that one. Someone's going to have to explain that one to me. But nonetheless, it won't be, there are no Warden Towers or anything like it. Because the Warden Towers, I think the idea of them, and it certainly works at the beginning, when people want to do all the world quests they could, but obviously much less so now, was just it's a way of getting a focal, because that's what you need for effective world PvP. What you absolutely must have is, you can't just expect people to randomly bump into each other in the world that are wanting to engage in PvP. You need foci, you need areas that are going to draw members of both factions. And I think the Warden Towers, that was the purpose of them. It was to draw people together into conflict. Didn't really work in the long term. So, now they're going to do this war mode, which is a better system now, because you shard people together that are actually wanting to do that. And that means every time... and your foci in those cases can be just the world quest. I really see a situation where people keep talking about, okay, doing the world quests in a group, so using people already use add-ons for world quests to get groups together to go around and do them efficiently. But I can just see, group of Alliance coming up to an area, group of Horde coming up to an area, and in actual fact going, sod the world quest, let's just have a big old scrap. I can just see that add-on being used more for brawling than for actually getting world quests done. This one. So Sethrak for the Horde, let Alliance have the Vulpera. No. Actually, Sethrak for the Horde, I don't know. I suppose if they were to become a race, it would make the most sense for them to be Horde. And I'm not talking about for storyline reasons. I'm talking about the fact that I look at Sethrak and I think, how the hell are they going to wear helms? So when you're doing putting your transmog or just wearing equipment without transmog, how are the helms going to work? But then I thought, I don't really get how they work on Tauren either. So Horde have got some experience of having to put gear onto races that have got no business wearing it. So Sethrak for the Horde makes sense from that point of view, because Horde outfitters have already got experience of having to try and fit outfits onto forms that just aren't built for them. But we don't want Vulpera. We don't really need another pointless race like that. We've already got our own pointless race. Let them be Horde as well. Now some WoW token misunderstandings. So there was an awful lot of misunderstandings. Bizarre, isn't it? This is what I don't get. This is why I'm completely baffled by the whole thing. I do. So basically, they brought out Black Ops 4 on Battle.net, and it caused the WoW token to skyrocket in value. I bought a few of them eventually, but as it was skyrocketing, all of a sudden it just caused the game to crash, and that caused a bit of confusion actually. But I just put that down to weird people not really associating things. So I called it the WoW token crash, and people inferred from that I was saying that the WoW token itself crashed. No, it's the game that crashed, and I was trying to explain that the word before a crash refers to the thing that caused the crash. So a car crash is when a car causes a crash. All right, it might crash into another car, but it might crash into a wall, but you don't call it a wall crash. And, and the biggest example of all, again, an economic link, is the Wall Street crash. Very famous. The street didn't crash. It was the economy that crashed, caused by Wall Street. It's the thing that caused it that goes before it. So this was the game crashing, but it was caused by the WoW token, hence WoW token crash. That's just how the naming convention goes. but a lot of people didn't really get it. I don't know whether it was a thing in translation, missing translation or something. I just left that one going. But in terms of what WoW tokens actually are, there seem to be some misconceptions too. So this one here, it says, tokens selling out is... They're digital. You can't sell out of something that isn't real. It's not like they have them sitting in a warehouse somewhere and have to keep inventory. Let me explain what... I'm sure everyone watching this, or most people watching this, do know what WoW tokens are. WoW tokens are not there. They're not there as a physical thing that Blizzard are giving us for gold, because then that's just going to be adding massive amounts of gold into the economy, where they already have to have gold sinks in terms of super expensive mounts. We have a 2 million gold spider mount in Legion, as an example. We're having a 5 million gold mount, although it can be reduced to 4 million, auction house mount in the next expansion, as another example. We have the black market auction house, another big gold sink there. And, so Blizzard are desperately keep trying to put in these gold sinks to keep a lid on the economy. So they're absolutely not going to suddenly give us a way to get hundreds of thousands of gold at a moment's notice. The whole purpose of it is it's a way of Blizzard saying, this person has a lot of gold that they would like to use for game time. This person, would like to provide them with that game time. They'll pay the real money, but they want the gold. So it's a way of just moving the gold from A to B, not creating any more. So it's entirely by design. And the point I was trying to make is, what's probably happened is a lot of people like myself, we knew that the WoW token was going to increase in value. And we were thinking of getting, if you're thinking of getting a few, then you just hold on, you don't buy it just yet. Why would you get it if in a few hours' time it's going to be worth more? So the supply dries up. And Blizzard even said, that's not just me speculating, a Blizzard community manager actually said that was the issue. It's people not buying. There's not enough supply. People aren't buying the WoW token, which means there aren't enough to meet the demand for it. So the price is going up for the fewer that there are. And that's how it works. But it's just a trade-off thing. If you buy a WoW token, it has to be sold by someone. There's a little bit of management of the value in it, in that Blizzard guarantee you will get the amount that it said you would get when you bought it, even if the value may have dipped since, or it may have risen since, and you've lost out. But the whole thing sort of should come out in the wash, because every now and then it'll go up, every now and then it'll go down. And then on to another WoW tokeny one. It says, WoW tokens are a crapshoot. They're worth nothing if no one will buy it from you with game gold because the price is so high. If the price is too high and people won't pay that price, the price comes down. It is a simple supply and demand thing. You've got to bear in mind, there's a reason why it's worth more in the EU than it is in North America. In the EU, it's worth well over 400,000 gold, even after, the funniness of last week. No, 300,000 gold, so behave yourself. It got up to about 400,000. It's now settled on around about 350 now or something. Or last time I checked. In North America, it's more like 200 and something thousand, isn't it? And that's just because there's greater demand. The demand to supply ratio is greater in EU than it is in North America. So it's determined by those simple market forces, and that's that's all there is to it. So the more people are willing to spend on it, the more it will be worth. And I know some people have said, because there are other comments as well about people saying that they don't really know how they've been doing this. They've been being able to earn enough WoW gold to be able to get it, and now they're struggling. But there are obviously enough people not struggling who are able to do it. So, because, as I say, if all those people that were previously struggling suddenly can't buy it, in theory, that would mean the price would have to come down, because, they're not selling as well, which means the price comes down. That's just how it works. But anyway, on to, World Questy stuff now. So, what I was saying here is, what people have noted is there are no caches for doing World Quest. You've got World Quest. Each World Quest has a reputation attached to it as normal. They're now displaying as well in the beta, which is good, so you can see which faction it's for. But there's also the usual thing where you've got the daily emissary cache thing, or quest, I should say, not cache, because you don't get a cache now for it. So you complete usually it's 4 world quests with the associated rep. If it's Tortollan, who are the new Kirin Tor, really, or in terms of emissary caches anyway, I keep calling it caches, and I mean quests, because I can't say cache, because we don't get one, where you only have to do 3. Now, when you go and turn it in, you still do get a reward, like a substantial reward of maybe artifact power or something like that, but you no longer get a cache. And I was saying, well, you arguably don't need a cache, because when you clicked on the cache, the big anticipation of clicking on a cache was not, oh, am I going to get order resources or artifact power or a crap bit of gear I don't need. It was always about, the gear did get better later on, admittedly. It was always about, am I going to get a legendary? That was what you were doing. As you were clicking on it, you were thinking, legendary, 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 legendary. And if you didn't get it, you were disappointed, and then you went again the next day. There's no need for that anymore. However, there's someone saying here, World Quest caches should return, even if it just drops some herbs or minor amount of gold. It feels cooler to pop than just to get AP for the quest turn-in. I agree with that. I do agree with that. There is, even if you're not going to get something super awesome like a legendary, there is that anticipation of clicking on a box. Same as clicking on a Blingtron thing. Most of the time it's just going to be crap. But it doesn't matter, because people like clicking the box. The mystery box, people like the mystery box. So I agree with that. I think a lot of people would prefer it if we just did get a cache, even if, as I say, and I think it's also a good idea to potentially drop some reagents as well, some crafting materials. I think that's a nice touch. Wouldn't have to be associated with your own profession. Could just be random ones. Again, sometimes you get those from Blingtron, don't you? I think that would be a nice touch. But at the moment, that's the sort of thing, if people have got that idea, they could always write something on the forums. I don't think Blizzard would be hugely opposed to it. I think they just feel, I don't think they've talked about it. I've not seen them talk about it. I think they just feel that it's not really needed. But, I agree that I think people would like that as well. Anyway, right, we have a spectacular one today. We do. I felt bad about this one because I've got a grudging admiration for this week's Idiot's Corner. I do have a grudging admiration for them, for their commitment to their cause. So basically, it's on the issue of Azeroth power. So we had this little exchange. So I referred to it as artifact power, and he's going, right, artifact, as if I've just sort of calling it what it's really called. A bit like calling order resources garrison resources or something like that. But then I replied, that's actually what it's called. That's actually what it's going to be called. And then the person replied, despite the fact it's called Azeroth power, to which I had to respond, no, it's not. It's called artifact power. And it is called artifact power. It's called artifact power in the beta. And Watcher, Ian Hazakostas, the game director, said so in the last Q&A. Because I thought at first, when I saw this in the alpha, and it was still being called artifact power, I just assumed that they hadn't got round to changing it yet. They were using the same bar as we've had for artifact power. They just hadn't got round to change it. I assumed that too. You would naturally assume that. And I was calling it Azeroth power at the time. But, he's since said, no, it's artifact power. To which he had to say, you're getting confused. Heart of Azeroth needs the item Azerite, which it does. The Heart of Azeroth is not an artifact. To which point I had to sort of say to them, then maybe you'd like to tell the World of Warcraft game director that, because he was pretty adamant. And we can hear it for ourselves.
With the Heart of Azeroth, there's one single universal artifact. The primary reward for Island Expeditions is going to be artifact power. And yes, artifact power, not Azeroth power. Your Heart of Azeroth is an artifact. You level it up with artifact power. We figured, why reinvent the wheel?
So, there we go. Couldn't be clearer. Could not be clearer on that one. And this is where all of a sudden my admiration went up. Not to be deterred by this minor setback. A true debater does not let something as foolish as facts get in the way. And this was absolutely classic, for which I don't really feel I should call it Idiot's Corner anymore, because this is actually quite impressive. So he said, Ian gets a bit confused. I saw the segment too. He's not very good with Q&As. It's Azeroth power. So he's saying, it's Azeroth power with everyone else. I had to ask. I unfortunately haven't got a response from this yet. I did have to say, where, for example, because it's artifact power in the actual game. And the game director, the boss of development on the entire game, has specifically said artifact power. He specifically said artifact power, not Azerite power. You know, he's made it super clear. He's not always clear in Q&As, I'll grant you that. But he did on this occasion make it super clear. But he gets terribly confused, doesn't he? Oh, dear. So anyway, that is this week's mailbox. Again, if you can identify the location of this mailbox, don't forget to put it in the comments below. Let's see if we get more than one person get it right this week. I'm sure we're not going to get enough to be able to remove the gnome thing, but don't worry about that. I will list the names next week if people do get them. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.